Last Saturday at Road America, the entity INDYCAR series officially confirmed plans to introduce a new INDYCAR chassis set to debut in 2028. Dallara will return as the chassis builder, and the goal is to design a car that looks appealing to a new generation of race fans while keeping specifically the styling cues that will make it look as an INDYCAR should. INDYCAR also wants to improve overall raceability, so the new car will be lighter with a weight reduction of 85 to 100 pounds compared to the current DW12 chassis that have been adapted over the years, the Aero screen and the hybrid engine added to the compound over the seasons. We'll also move to a 2.4-litre twin-turbocharged V6 engine, which is expected to provide more torque and horsepower than the current car. The gearbox for 2028 will also be 25 pounds lighter compared to the current gearbox. Low-voltage hybrid technology that was introduced to INDYCAR almost a year ago will continue to evolve with the new car, as it will have a longer deployment, more horsepower gain, and improved performance. As the DW12 chassis has been known for its life-saving safety features, there will also be additional safety innovations with the new car. We'll see an ergonomic driver cockpit to improve the seating position. The Aero screen will be integrated into the chassis instead of bolted on, with a new rollover hoop as well. INDYCAR hopes to have the new car on track for testing in early 2026, with a photo taken by Joe Sabinski from Penske Entertainment. Yes! New car! Finally! It's coming! What are your thoughts on the initial details shared about the new INDYCAR chassis for 2028?
I mean, it all sounds good on paper, right? But how many times have we gotten, a new set of regulations where it looks good on paper, and then when you actually see it on the track, it doesn't do what they said it was going to do. So that's the part that obviously concerns me in recent memory. The only set of regulations that seem to, have lived up to the hype is what we have right now in sports car racing, with IMSA's GTP class and the World Endurance Championships hypercar class, because it's just been a phenomenal golden age for sports car racing. So they definitely delivered with those set of regulations. And for IndyCar's sake, I hope that they will. And it's really crazy. This car is going to be like 15, 16 years old by the time its life cycle comes to an end. We definitely had a good run with the DW12 and saved a lot of lives, kept the drivers a lot safer for the years. We've seen some great racing along the way, but it's past due for a new car. And I'm really happy that it's planning to arrive in 2028. And it's good that they plan to have it on track early next year for testing, and they'll have 2 full years, to sort out any issues with it. So hopefully there'll be a small rollout at the start of the 2028 season, and we'll see what this next generation IndyCar is going to do. And Josh, you mentioned the additions of the Aero screen in 2020, and then the hybrids last summer added extra weight to the car, and that really, upset the handling of the car. And we've also seen heard some of the drivers talk about how it's changed, the car and how they have to adapt their driving style and all of that. And a lot of the drivers aren't a fan of how the car drives now. So it's probably music to their ears that's going to be 85 to 100 pounds lighter, because, you need to have a traditional, formula car here. And, instead of something that's, feel like you're dragging an anchor. And there's also a good thing that, that the Aero screen will be built onto the car, instead of, it's just something that you bolt on. Real positive there. And just overall, this new car is probably going to be better suited for the hybrid system that we, bolt onto the back of them right now. So that's another positive. Maybe we'll see the true potential of this hybrid engine in the IndyCar series. And as I've been saying on our wrap-up show, we've had 3 good races in a row in IndyCar with the hybrid. Streets of Detroit, good race. Gateway was really good, and then Road America was good as well. So I think we're finally figuring something out with this hybrid. And for IndyCar's sake, through the rest of this season, 2026, 2027, I hope we're finally figuring out this package so we have something to work with until we can get to the new car. But all in all, I think it all sounds really good on paper, and I hope it'll end up delivering.
Yeah, likewise. Good evening, everybody. The speckiest car that was ever a spec series that ever specced, the IndyCar DW12. It's like, those bird ball things that you put in the tree and they just peck at it and they just keep pecking at it. That's what we've done with this car. As you said, Josh, we've added the Aero screen, adding the hybrid. We had the Aero kits and they went away. And all the other bits and pieces that we've seen over these last few years. But to have that all now going to be integrated into this new car is going to be really good. If they can get the weight down, as you said, Kobe, people have struggled with it. The costs of this hybrid, I think, have gone past where I think a lot of it was supposed to be at the beginning, much like we saw in British touring cars a few years ago when they brought their hybrid system in. And now, of course, that's fallen out of bed as well. So if we can keep some of the costs back down again, of course, with a new car, there always going to be a massive cost and such like for the teams, but I'm sure that can be hopefully sorted. And to your point about the safety, only last week, Joseph Newgarden's terrific rollover at Gateway, proving once again how magnificent, really, this DW12 has been in the case of safety. We've seen some terrifying crashes over the last 13 or years or whatever it's been now with this car at Indy, on road courses, on Gateway, as I mentioned, and other places, and it stood up every single time, which is thankful. We've had the odd injury here or there, but for the most part it's been fantastic. If they can keep that core safety element with this new car, get some of the weight down, and we could be on to a winner. But I will just hold the guns on IndyCar saying they're going to do something and then it never happening. The game still not happened. Calendar changes still not happened, although we've just had some breaking news on that as we went on the air, that Thermal looks like it's not going to be back next year on the calendar, unsurprisingly. So plenty of things we always talk about with IndyCar that never actually happen. This one though does look like it might.
Thermal was an interesting challenge. It had some interesting bits, but let's never go back there ever again. Thank you very much.
Testing.
Yeah,
I give it that. Preseason test. If they want to go with a thermal for preseason test, have no issue with that whatsoever. But but as far as a race there, probably don't need to do that again. I know they experimented with that so-called all-star race, which was really a dud. I think Palou ended up dominating that one, and then just this year, it just didn't live up to the standard. Fox had that issue, with the truck, and they said it was a problem with thermal just being out there rather than being at your traditional road course racing facility. So that's an issue there. So I think thermal is probably best suited, to be your preseason test destination.
Yeah, and the Fox team have actually solved that problem now as well, because if they do go off there or they have a rain delay, they've bought themselves a Nintendo N64 and a couple of GoldenEye as well. So they've been playing that. I knew at the Oval at Gateway they were playing it during the rain delays. Adam's with us. He's looking forward to seeing how this new car does on track in a few years' time. Yep, it'll be old enough to be drafted into whatever Donald Trump wants to get up to next. IndyCar to Mexico City, let's go. That's a good option. That, to be fair, I think after the interesting things of NASCAR, it would, I think, make more sense for IndyCar to go back there, as it's got more of a route to go there. I think Brazil should be on that mix, and Montreal as well in Canada, not just in Toronto. They should have a proper Indy series on their side, where rumor is F1 is not going to be in too good of a favour with that side of the world coming soon next year, as we've been talking about in the programme. Let's carry on, because IndyCar President Doug Bowles has said that what many fans and drivers have been saying for the last few years, the time has come for a new chassis, and he has praised the DW12 for serving the series well since 2012. But given the additions of the Aeroscreen and hybrid engine, he acknowledged this accelerated the need for a brand new car. Last year, IndyCar had planned to debut the hybrids at the start of the 2024 season, but due to teething issues, they delayed it till later on in the season at Mid-Ohio. The new 2028 IndyCar chassis was supposed to come in 2027, but it's been pushed back a year now as well. What a surprise. But when it comes to the 2028 IndyCar, if they do run into some major issues during the development process, can they afford to delay it to 2029 or later? Because then we're running the risk of having this car in 3 different decades.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a mad statement, isn't it? To have run this DW12 across 3 different decades of the series. Don't forget, if you go back to COVID times, supercars had delayed their Gen 3, and then they talked about bringing it in mid-season, and then delayed it to the end of the season. That was going to be a thing. And that, obviously, they had a lot of teething problems with that in the beginning. Seems to have sorted itself out really nicely now. But yeah, they can't afford any slip-ups with this. This has got to be a smooth transition. we talked about, and I mentioned before in my previous answer, a lot of fans on the back of IndyCar, and we've seen that over the last month to 6 weeks, haven't we, since Indianapolis as well, with all the Penske stuff and what's gone on since. So you can't afford, again, and nod to Ben on this one, people getting on the back of IndyCar. You can't afford them to lose any more of the fan base for teething issues with cars, with the television stuff, which we just talked about, and all that kind of thing. This has to go absolutely to the book.
I totally agree, Matt. I don't really have much to add, but they really need to have a good timeline here. Like we need to get this done at this time, and they need to do their best to stick on schedule. But I know along the way everything doesn't go according to plans, and you'll see some hiccups along the way. But yeah, I don't think IndyCar can afford to delay this to 2029 or later. I think that this is something that needs to happen in 2028, and whatever the season. Whatever the first race of the season is in 2028, if it's still St. Pete or another location, that's when the car needs to be ready to go, and hopefully it won't have too many issues once it comes on. But it's going to be interesting to see what this car looks like. I remember reading over the offseason, Marshall Pruitt from Racer.com wrote how IndyCar sent the team owners like a rendering of what they had hoped the new car would look like, and there was a lot of people who were upset about how it looked. So hopefully since then they've gone back to the drawing board, redraw the car and get something that the team owners and the drivers can get on board with, because you definitely want, you really want to design a car that's obviously going to work extremely well on the different types of tracks we go to, whether it's the super speedways like Indianapolis, short oval like Gateway, or road course like Meadow Highway, or street course like Long Beach. You need to have a car able to, perform and put on good racing at all four of those different types of tracks. And hopefully we'll end up getting that. And when you look at like the I guess the tier system when it comes to open wheel racing, obviously Formula One's going to be at the top, pinnacle of motorsport, and then right after that you want to think like, what's the next best there? And a lot of people I've seen, they say it's a super formula car, it's probably the second best compared to F1, and then after that you might get IndyCar. But I think IndyCar, with this new car, they need to step it up, and they need to at least rival Super Formula here to try, as the second best open wheel racing series in the world. So hopefully they'll design a car that's capable of living up to that height. And going back to Adam's comment right quick before we move on about IndyCar to Mexico City, I also think Racer.com wrote a while ago that if Thermal disappeared from the schedule, its race would probably go to Mexico City at the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, and that's why I said on our chat before tonight's show that this is probably a good sign for Mexico City, because we've been hearing for like the last few weeks and months, that they're very close, to getting an IndyCar race next spring in Mexico City, and how it will make a lot of sense logistically. So we got the Dallas street course race, outside of AT&T Stadium there. It will make a lot of sense to, go to Mexico City, then go to Dallas, or vice versa. You're in Dallas and then you go to Mexico City right after that, rather than going all the way across the country, and then it becomes a logistical nightmare. So I think that would be really exciting, if they're able to go to Mexico City. And also for the sake of Pato O'Ward, who is a superstar in Mexico. Yeah. I mean, he is just a mega star in Mexico. It's just so amazing. Like wherever he goes, it doesn't matter if it's the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It doesn't matter if it's, somewhere in St. Louis at Gateway. He brings a crowd with him, and if he's really, getting all of these fans to come up to him at these IndyCar races in the States, if they go to Mexico City next year, like, can you imagine what the scenes are going to be like? I mean, we've already seen it in, in last year when he ran the FP1 with McLaren during the Mexican Grand Prix race weekend. Like, Pato wasn't even driving in the race, and I believe he had more people approaching than they did Sergio Perez. Just show you how popular this guy is.
I was going to say, listening to Jeff Gluck and Jordan Bianchi a couple of weeks ago on the back of the Mexico NASCAR race, they were shocked how much billboards of Pato were up around the city, adverts on the television with him doing bits and pieces. He is like the number one Mexican motorsport guy. You would think, with Daniel Suarez being in NASCAR and that being the whole weekend, and of course we saw how that went in that Xfinity race, it would be big for him. But Pato is the absolute number one guy. And back to your renders comment, Kobe, you remember probably back to, I don't know, it must have been about 2010 when they were having we had the same conversation about when the DW12 came in. We had the renders come out for all the sort of, I seem to remember they had 4 that they went to pick from, and a couple of those were absolutely ghastly looking things. So they went with an okay one in the end, and as we've talked about, it's lasted the test of time.
Yeah, I think it's written in the Doomsday Book now, the DW12. It's just logged in, isn't it?